I'm Pastor Shafer, the senior pastor here at Mount Olive Lutheran Church in Santa Monica, California. And this is Hope Matters. Hope Matters is a program produced by Mount Olive where we talk to interesting people from around the US and around the world about the theme of hope. And today I'm so pleased to have as our guest the Reverend Susan Sparks, pastor of the Madison Avenue Baptist Church in New York City, among many other claims to fame, and a dear friend of mine for some years. Pastor Sparks, besides being a pastor, is a well-known writer, comedian, lawyer, and drives a mean Harley, I believe, too. So, Susan, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Pastor Shafer. I am honored to be a part of your YouTube program on hope. Lord knows we need more of it.
That's for sure. You're doing a regular newspaper column too these days, right?
I am. I write a nationally syndicated column for Gannett, and it comes out every 2 weeks. It's in about 400 papers, mostly medium to small papers across the country. But yeah, I love doing that. I end up taking many times kind of the core of a sermon that I've written and reducing it down to like 600 words, which is a lot harder than it sounds,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Probably should do it backwards, so the sermon would be a little more focused, but yeah, I love doing it.
And you kind of have a reputation for having interesting words on your sign outside the church too.
We do. It's funny that you should say that because we've just started them back. Like many congregations, we've been on site. We've been closed since COVID hit. And while our worship and on-site gatherings are closed, we've started the signs back. Our admin started coming back, and it's meant so much to the neighborhood. We are flat front to Madison Avenue in New York City, and we're also within another building. So all we have to show who we are is the face of the church, no steeple, no separate building. And so we use the marquee to put signs out that are either funny or interesting or make you think. One said recently, what happens in Vegas is forgiven here. One said, lower your expectations and claim a victory. But my all-time favorite was one that Brian put up, I think it was last February, and it said, honk if you love Jesus, text while driving if you want to meet him.
I like the fact, Susan, that they're not snarky, though.
No, but and some of them actually were quotes that are, it's not necessarily scripture, but are inspirational quotes. And even within the humor, there is kind of an embedded message of hope or inspiration. So when people take photographs of these walking by and post them on social media, many times they'll go viral. And so we think, all right, well, why is this not as an important of a ministry as the sermon?
Certainly is. And talk a little bit about the comedy work you do. I think our viewers would be interested. You do a number of things, but one of the things you do is a comedy routine with is it a rabbi and an imam, if I remember correctly?
It's a rabbi and a Muslim comic. Rabbi Bob Alper started this tour right after 9/11, and I had been doing stand-up even as a trial lawyer. So I came into seminary as a stand-up comedian, which scared the bejesus out of the professors. What are you going to do? But anyway, I ended up meeting Bob. And right after 9/11 hit, Bob had the idea of trying to piece together a Christian stand-up, a Muslim stand-up, and a rabbi or a Jewish stand-up. And so he got three of us on stage and we just started the tour and it just took off. So we've been doing it ever since. And it's, everything from, the Clinton Presidential Center or Habitat for Humanity. We did the World Bank and they globally streamed it. But then we also do churches and synagogues and mosques and community gatherings, just all to, if nothing else, people walk out of that show seeing that we have more in common than we would imagine. And that's our whole goal. It's not to, certainly not to rip apart who we are or be negative, but it's to build bridges to show what we have in common.
That's wonderful. And how many books have you written now about?
Well, I've got 3 out there now, and I just was scribbling a little bit on the 4th one this morning, so we'll see. But yes, I have 3. The most recent one I'm excited about is called Miracle on 31st Street. And I know people know Miracle on 34th Street from, of course, the famous movie about Macy's, but our church is 3 blocks south of that on 31st Street. So literally it's a 30-second walk to where, the famous Macy's of the movie. And so I put together this collection of Advent meditations that are, a little offbeat, different, kind of funny. Many of them are drawn from the columns that I've written. So they're short, 600 to 800 words, and they go into themes of hope, peace, love, joy. So each day somebody would read their meditation, and then I've got like a little workbook that comes with it. They can journal. But my favorite piece is an online Advent calendar that comes with the book, and you go online. You open your day for the Advent calendar, and there's a video or an image or a thought or a quote that's inspirational, fun, lifts your day up. And so it's a whole kind of process through Advent that leads you through Christmas Eve and then into the day after Christmas. And whether you use it at Advent or, in March, it doesn't really matter. It's just a matter of using that Christmas joy any time of the year to lift yourself up.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. We should say to our non-Christian viewers that Advent is the 4-week season in the Christian year that is during which Christians prepare for Christmas. And Advent meaning coming, if I remember my translation correctly. So, do you have a copy of the book you can hold up for us, Susan?
Why, yes, I do. Thank you.
I your money.
Shameless of me. So here's the book.
All right.
And the title is Miracle on 31st Street, Christmas cheer every day of the year. And this is my favorite part, Grinch to gratitude in 26 days.
All right.
So thanks, Eric. And the exciting, I just finished doing the audio recording, so that's going to hit at Thanksgiving. So we'll have all 3 out there.
So your neighborhood bookstore or Amazon or those kind of places to find it?
Amazon, straight Amazon.
Okay, great, wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
That's great. And you told me before we began the recorded interview, that you do talk about hope in the book. So let's talk a little bit about hope. Advent is the season for hope, and it is coming up. But for you, where do you find hope in your life, Susan?
Yeah, well, it's tough right now. I mean, we're talking today, a week before the election, in the middle of a pandemic. With racial unrest throughout our country and at a level that, we've not seen in, I don't know, decades. And whatever else you can load onto it, where do you find hope in the midst of this? And it makes preaching very difficult, I must say. But I've taken a couple of different approaches in the book and in my preaching. I'll start with the preaching. In September, I thought, what am I going to say? Like, where is anything inspirational in this time? And I thought, well, who's gone through something like this? Who's gone through plagues and life in a place where it's devoid of any landmarks of completely unknown territory? I thought, aha. So we're doing a 7-sermon series on the children of Israel in the desert. And, we all know the stories. But there's something so powerful about going back to see our ancient ones, our wise ones, and how they dealt with things that we may think are unique, but are so not. And just every week, just walking with them, like we've been there. This is what they did. This is what we can do. We can get through this. So that's the approach we're taking at Madison right now to take us through Advent. In the book itself, I've got a 6 different chapters that deal with it, but I'll give you one example. One talks about it takes the heat to bring the grace. And it all talks about a place in Birmingham, Alabama that I visited a couple of years ago called Eugene's Hot Chicken. I don't know if your viewers or listeners have ever had hot chicken, but if you haven't, my condolences, because it's the greatest food on earth. They just take fried chicken, and when it comes out of the fryer, they throw hot sauce on it so it seeps in, and it's the greatest thing ever. Anyway, I visited Eugene, and they have all the different levels of hot, but they have something called stupid hot, which is their hottest. And when I was in line, the woman behind me said to me, "You better get the stupid hot." And I was like, "Really? Why?" And she said, And she was an older local woman, and with her great Southern accent, and me being a Southerner, of course, I melted. And she just reared back and said, well, honey, it takes heat to bring the grace. And I just, in that moment, I thought, okay, well, of course I'm going to order the stupid hot. But then I thought, there's my sermon right there. And it's so true. And I started thinking about stories like when Jacob wrestled with the angel in our difficult places and our places we're wrestling with life and our hot places. Maybe we can just stop and say, I'm not going to let go of you until you bless me. And in those difficult places, in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of losing our job, in the middle of, not being able to leave our home, in the middle of trying to keep our kids sane while they can't go to school, sometimes we just have to stop and stare it in the eye and say, give me a blessing out of this. Where is it? Show it to me. I need it right now. And you never know what comes out of those hot places. So I tend to hold on to ideas like that it's possible, but sometimes you have to face down the fear to find the grace.
That's wonderful. Thank you. You know, and I've said this to you before, you sound an awful lot like a Lutheran as a Baptist,
Well, I'm married to a Lutheran,
I
so
know you're married to a Lutheran.
there
from
it is.
from a famous Lutheran family even. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, well, you do come out obviously on the more liberal side in that Baptist panoply of Baptists.
Very much so.
I noticed in your columns that food does play a large role.
What better topic do we have? I mean, it's funny, I'm preaching on manna this Sunday, so I guess you're right. I do have kind of a focus on it. It's funny that you should say that because another one of the chapters in Hope is called The Politics of Sweet Potato Casserole. And it's the whole idea of how do we find hope in the midst of us fighting all the time like this. And the gist of the chapter is you just got to find common ground. And in every situation, is as harsh as it can be, there is some tiny thread of common ground. And I use the analogy of the big fight in our family was always, what do you put on top of the sweet potato casserole? Do you put marshmallows or do you put brown sugar and pecans? Well, of course you put brown sugar and pecans. I don't know about these lesser people that like the marshmallows, whatever, but that's the battle. And I talk about how in our family, we tried to find the common ground. We all love sweets. We're just finding a way to the sweet. In life, it's the same thing. We want peace for our children. We want a better world for our children. We want a better life in the future. We just got to find the similar way to get there. So, food sometimes is the doorway to giving a message about a familiar topic in a different way.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anything else you want to share with our viewers today on the theme of hope, or anything else is on your heart today?
Goodness. I guess just, if nothing else, just to remember that laughter is such an important time in this difficult era, and that may sound strange to some people. I'll give you this quick story. I was here in New York on 9/11, and the day after those planes hit, I was taking inbound phone calls from folks that were looking for loved ones, and a woman got on my line and said, "Oh, okay, let me tell you, my husband was on this high floor of this tower." She was describing what he wore, what he looked like, and then she just burst out laughing. And she was like, "Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you, he had on the worst tie. Horrible. I told him not to wear it to work. It was like these little pigs and these palm trees. It didn't match his suit. It was horrible." Long silence. I'm just holding the phone. This is obviously not a video call. And I didn't know what to say. And after a moment, she came back on and said, "I'm sorry if laughter seems inappropriate right now, but it's all my family and I have left." And so I just want to encourage people to remember that laughter can be a lifeboat, not a time where you stick your head in the sand, but a moment where it's almost like God comes and lifts the burden up for a split second and allows us to breathe. And then the burden comes back down, but we can find such joy and peace and hope and the ability to laugh in a place of pain. So as a comedian and a minister, that's my best advice in facing down this fall and this winter.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much. And thank you for being with us here on Hope Matters this week.
Thank you.
So glad that you could. Yes, this is Hope Matters, a production of Mount Olive Lutheran Church here in Santa Monica, California. So glad that Pastor Susan Sparks from the Madison Avenue Baptist Church in New York City has been our guest today. And we do these programs because we believe that hope matters, and we believe we have a God of hope. Thank you